Let's talk about all of the headlines with our panel. Alice Stewart is here, our political commentator and a Republican strategist. Steve Israel joins us, a former Democratic congressman from New York, as well as Laura Coates, our legal analyst and a former federal prosecutor. I got to start with you, Laura. So Flynn wants immunity. The president wants Flynn to get immunity, even though they both said very different things about what it means if you are granted immunity just last year. How likely do you think it is that the FBI would actually grant him immunity, though?
Well, I mean, it's obvious why one would want immunity if you really do have some criminal liability or exposure. But the bigger question is, why would the FBI give it to you? And there's really three conditions. One, I've got to actually not already have the information that you want to tell me. Two, I have to believe the information that you are going to tell me. And probably most importantly to them, will it implicate somebody who's a bigger fish? Remember, immunity works under the theory of the fish rots from the head. Who is above you, or at least your same level, that you can implicate in some way? If that's not there to entice the FBI, there may be no incentive to do so. But ultimately, this seems to be, from the letter that he's written through his lawyer, a matter of personal, perhaps professional vindication. And if that's simply the motivation, and there's nothing more that would actually be able to illuminate the issue for the FBI, they don't have a lot of incentive. Except, Poppy, as you know, we talked about, there's a lot of smoke, which means a lot of circumstantial evidence. And if that's the case, if there's no smoking gun, his testimony may be useful and invited, based with immunity, to say, piece together these different aspects of circumstantial evidence to give us a complete picture.
Alice, as a Republican strategist, what do you make of the strategy of the White House this morning, or at least the president this morning, who is tweeting, yeah, he agrees that Flynn should get immunity, and therefore it seems like he's encouraging him to tell his story?
Well, it's shades of Hillary Clinton days, back when a lot of her people sought immunity back when they were undergoing questioning. They also claimed that there was, absolutely 5 of them got it, and they also claimed there was a witch hunt here. Look, I'm not reading too much into the fact that he is seeking immunity for a lot of reasons, some of what Laura mentioned, but also you have to consider, is he also concerned about he might possibly get caught up in a technicality? We know that he didn't file the proper disclosure papers when he was going through his security clearance. That could hang him up. And also his conversations with Russians during the transition period. So he doesn't want to get caught up in that technicality while he's testifying about these other issues. So that makes perfect sense. But that being said, to Laura's point, there certainly is a lot of smoke here, and who knows if it will lead to a fire. I would also imagine these other people that have offered to testify, Manafort, Roger Stone, and others, I wouldn't be surprised if we hear them seeking immunity as well in order exchange for their testimony. But certainly, more than anything, it's better we're getting information now, and hopefully we can put this part of the investigation behind us so we can look at the real threat, which is Russian interference in our elections.
I mean, no question he and all these folks can be and will be compelled to testify. The question is, do they say anything, or do they just take the fifth over and over and over? Congressman Israel, to you, let me read you what Adam Schiff, the ranking Democrat on the House Intel Committee, just tweeted this morning about all of this. He tweeted, "The public should learn a lot more about why General Flynn wants immunity when Sally Yates testifies before the House Intelligence Committee." So he's up in arms over what he calls this politicization, I cannot say that word, on Nunes's behalf. But isn't he also adding to that by tweeting things like this and then not giving any more details?
Well, first of all, Poppy, let me say that whether immunity is a good idea or a bad idea, lawyerly or not, there are 3 words that no politician at any level wants to hear in their narrative, and that is immunity from prosecution. And that is the narrative. With respect to Congressman Schiff's comments, look, you have a chairman of the Intelligence Committee who is supposed to be bipartisan, who has consistently tried to protect the political interests of the White House. And the ranking member has an obligation to call him out on that. The ranking member has an obligation to set the record straight. Right now, you don't have a straight record. You have hearings that were canceled, witnesses who were supposed to testify, who were then told they would not testify, furtive trips to the White House, now 2 White House officials who may have used classified information in order to advance the president's political agenda. Silence in the face of that bias is not an option for Congressman Schiff.
But is Schiff, okay, but my question to you was, is he just adding to sort of the politics swirling around this by tweeting things like this that leave, frankly, a lot more questions than answers?
Look, I think you've got to get this information out in the public. In my view, Chairman Nunes is doing everything he can to withhold information, not to share that information with the Intelligence Committee and with the American people. Congressman Schiff has an obligation and a right to tweet and to make sure that the American people know exactly what the issues are and what's at stake.
So one of the things that makes this legally all the more complicated, Laura Coates, is that it is the Department of Justice that would grant this immunity or not grant this immunity. And Sessions, the AG, has recused himself from all things Russia. So then where does that put us?
Exactly, and you would think that you need to have the authorization of the Department of Justice to give immunity at this level. Remember, the immunity they're seeking is basically prosecution from whatever it is you learn from what I tell you. And we're at the very early, although it's since July, stages of an investigation. And so without a Deputy Attorney General firmly in place, who's already been peppered with questions about how they will deal with the Russian investigation and whether they will appoint a special prosecutor, Jeff Sessions' recusal now has an exponential implications for down the line. And you would think, because this is based on the campaign dealings with the Trump administration, and Sessions is a part of that, perhaps it would have inured to the benefit of the Trump administration if Sessions had stayed on and perhaps denied immunity, allowing him not to testify to the way he wanted to testify.
So the White House, Sean Spicer, no one's given up on asking these questions over and over to him, but I want to play for you guys back to back his responses to these questions, both on Tuesday and Wednesday of this week, and then we'll assess where we are now.
But when the information that is occurring now, which is two individuals who are properly cleared, or three, or whoever he met with, I don't know, that they are sharing stuff that is entirely legal with the appropriate clearances, and then there's an obsession on the process. And again, I understand that when things are leaked out in the media, that somehow that is a standard that's acceptable, but when two people who are cleared to discuss classified information, or three or however many, discuss classified information, somehow that's wrong because it's not being leaked.
It's kind of odd, Alice, because then he said on Thursday, I can't talk about this, I don't have any more information.
There's such a back and forth and back and forth. It is confusing. Look, I've always supported Nunes in his efforts to, when he has information, he and Schiff at the time would go right to the media and put it all out there so they wouldn't have to answer a million questions, and that is the right way to go about doing it. But when he went to the press and to the White House before he went to his colleagues on the committee, that's when things started not to add up and started to raise questions. Now the questions are whether he is working to protect the president or whether he's working to seek justice. And there's such a colossal effort to find information to vindicate or validate the president's tweet. Everything, the truth and justice is gotten lost in all of this. So in my view, I think the best thing moving forward, forget about who gave the information to him on the White House, whether we got there in an Uber or a cab, that's irrelevant. I think we need to bring in someone new, someone independent, and seek justice in this case, because right now there's too much politics involved in order that's clouding our efforts to seek justice.
Alice Stewart, thank you so much. Laura Coates to you as well. Congressman Steve Israel, you get the first answer next time because we ran out of time. Thank you.